there. Everyone has their favourite movie quote, but just like cinema, video games have given us some iconic lines through the years. In this video, I'm going to rank my top 10 favourite quotes of all time. Of course, this is a very subjective topic, and I suspect you won't agree with my picks. At the end of the day, it's just my opinion, so please let me know in the comments below which lines would make your personal top 10 list. I did bounce a few ideas off my friends, so thanks to them for their input. Without further ado, let's get started. We begin with Metal Gear Solid. This comes from a series filled with iconic dialogue, but my personal favourite is one that belongs on any list of video game quotes. I could have gone for Peace Walker's classic line, which you hear every time you die, but instead I'm going to go for this one.
What was that noise?
Point and click games provide a great source of memorable quotes, and the Broken Sword series has its fair share. It's a series that holds a special place in my heart, and I'm working on a video reviewing the entire series. But until then, how about a favourite quote? I had wanted to include the protagonist George Stobart's classic line, "The mournful look in the goat's eyes were beginning to depress me." But finding a clip of this line has proved as difficult as the puzzle is to solve. So instead I will share a humorous exchange from the first game.
I guess you might say I'm acting in the interests of truth and justice. Oh, thank God. I thought you were the police.
If you're a fan of Batman, then I'm sure you have your favourite quotes from the movies or possibly even the comic books. And I imagine many of those quotes might be delivered by the Joker. Well, the video games have their fair share too, and Batman Arkham Asylum is packed full of great quotes, including a few from the Joker himself. And I'm going to pick one of his most humorous remarks.
Tell me, Bats, what are you really scared of? Failing to save this cesspool of a city? Not finding the commissioner in time? Me? In a thong?
And now on to number 7. Just like number 9, a couple of entries ago, this comes from a classic point-and-click adventure. A game series that I recently talked about in a franchise-focused video, card in the top right corner. The Discworld games, of course, are stuffed, full of great lines, but one of the best comes from simply right-clicking on our hero Rincewind to hear his description of himself.
Rincewind, Homo sapiens sorcerus, irritabilis. In reality, I'm a full foot taller, bronzed and rippling with muscles, but it's been a hard night for the artist.
One of my favourite game series is Mass Effect, and it's another one that provides many memorable quotes. Though many of which are quite thought-provoking, perhaps the most iconic line comes from the second instalment of the franchise. It isn't deep or philosophical in the least. In fact, it's a little bit silly. And the quote won't mean anything to people who've not played the game before, but for those who have, this one might bring a little smile to your face.
I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel.
Number 5 comes from what is quite possibly my favourite video game of all time, Disco Elysium. And it's another that has its fair share of brilliant dialogue. A bit like Mass Effect, many of those lines are deep, or as Danny Dyer would say, proper reflective.
Yeah. Yes, it's proper reflective, isn't it?
But I'm not going to include any of those. Instead, I'm going for one that I quote quite often with my friends. It's not something said by Harry, or Kim, or the ancient reptilian brain, or even Kuno. All of those characters have many quotable lines. Instead, my favourite comes from a fairly minor character, Egghead.
Hard quarters of nigger!
again, like a few of the other entries in this list, our next quote comes from a franchise that could probably warrant an entire top 10 list of its own. There are hundreds of great lines from Portal 2, many of which are delivered by one of my favourite comedians, Stephen Merchant, who voices Wheatley. But instead I'm going to go for a line that comes from GLaDOS. Do you remember this one?
Look at you, sailing through the air majestically, like an eagle, piloting a blimp.
The next quote is technically stolen from elsewhere. In fact, it could be considered one of the great one-liners of cinema. I'm of course talking about the infamous line delivered by Rowdy Roddy Piper in John Carpenter's movie They Live. But of course this is a list of memorable video game quotes. And this line was borrowed by one of gaming's coolest anti-heroes, Duke Nukem.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
Changing things up for my number 2 pick, this is a game that many enjoyed on the PC back in the 90s, although it was available on a few consoles as well. Theme Hospital was a lot of fun, and there were some great announcements from the receptionist, but one in particular always brought a smile to my face.
Patients are reminded not to die in the corridors.
Before we take a look at my number 1 pick, I wanted to include a few honourable mentions, partly because there are so many great quotes, and it's quite hard to whittle it down to a list of just 10. So here are a few others that I did consider adding to my top 10 list. First up, this is simply iconic, and for most gamers this is going to bring back a certain level of frustration, as you might have seen it more than once. From GTA San Andreas, I present you one of gaming's most annoying lines, but iconic nonetheless.
All we had to do was follow the damn train, CJ!
My next pick is from a very old game, certainly the oldest on this list. Who remembers playing the Oregon Trail? If you do, you might remember a certain line that was just as frustrating as the one from San Andreas. Who remembers this one? Here's one I had to include. The Elder Scrolls games have many memorable quotes, but there's a certain one you might have heard more often than any other as you explored Skyrim.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Regular viewers and friends will know that I'm not a fan of horror games, but there is one that I have played, and that's the original Resident Evil. I don't know if there are more iconic lines than this one, but this is one of the best.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
My next honourable mention comes from a classic fighting game, Mortal Kombat. I did consider including Get Over Here, but there is one line that I find more iconic than that. And finally, let's just get this one out of the way, arguably the most famous of all gaming quotes. I felt I had to include this because it's just so obvious. It comes from Mario.
It's me, Mario!
So now we're done with the honourable mentions, it's time to take a look at my pick for the best quote from video games. So what do you think I've chosen? If you've been subscribed to the channel for a while, you might know what this is going to be. It's from one of the greatest gaming franchises of all time, and I believe it's appeared in every single instalment of the series. That's right, my favourite line comes from the Fallout games.
War never changes.
So that's my top 10, and I'm sure that you will not agree with all my picks, so why not let me know in the comments below what I missed. I look forward to seeing your favourites. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Also, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a like, and check out one of these 2 videos floating on the screen for more retro gaming content. Until next time, stay safe and keep gaming.